Without doubts, I think it's by far the best league in the world.
How dare you score like that in the Premier League? Mission accomplished in the Premier League.
So let's start with you on this one, Bickler. Not a lot of changes for them in the offseason as of now. I know there are some like rumors, especially, I mean, it wouldn't be a transfer season if Zaha was not rumored with like multiple moves. So what do you make of him overall? Is it a good thing for, especially like a coach like Vieira, who was starting to build something and you saw him slightly like, having more of an identity? Is a lack of movements in some ways a good thing?
I mean, I guess I would first want to start out with saying that, like, my first reaction to this is that I want to make Patrick Vieira's profile pick my LinkedIn profile pick. If we could make that change, I think that would probably do a lot of good things for my social networking skills on the business side. But yeah, look at how happy he is. With good reason. I mean, I think they had a really good year. I think that he solidified a lot of them things for them. And I think he really created, I mean, I guess identity is my buzzword for the day, but I feel like they really sort of found themselves last year when they got away from just dreadful Hodgson, like static, ancient football. They started being a little more free-flowing from an offensive standpoint. I thought they, started to sort of solidify defensively, which was their main weakness. They've got a few things that are weird, So say they lose Zaha, because that's the rumor. Roma's in for Zaha. I know there's some teams that are circling that wagon. If I'm Crystal Palace, I'm like just lovingly shoving him out the door, because I think in a weird way with that team, as many young players as there are, I think that's almost addition by subtraction. Zaha is a dynamic player. He obviously is electric, but I think that I would be worried about his influence on my younger players. He has a tendency to be extremely temperamental, both all on and off the pitch. And I think that when they're on the pitch, Zaha wants the play to flow through him. And I don't think that's always what's best for Crystal Palace. And I think that they're sometimes improved when they don't flow through him. So if they lose him, though, if Zaha goes, they lose their two best players from last year, and him and Gallagher. So they kind of got to rebuild from there. Interesting in the fact that they really have like 5 players that they can plug in at striker. If you talk about the young French kid, Elise, you've got Eduardo, Benteke, Mateta, Ayu. And like, there's got to be some, like, they seem to really sort of fluctuate how they use those guys. I would argue that I think Mateta is the most talented of the bunch. He's inconsistent, but he's like a big physical French striker, and I think he looks really good when he's on, when he's in form. So I think also they're probably their most prolific and best was Eduard. So like, I don't know how they're gonna set up in that regard. It'll be interesting to see how they set up top, especially if they lose Zaha. So some question marks, but they had a solid year last year. I think they've got a lot to build on, and I think Vieira has at least got them with a brand now.
So Zaha is an interesting one. So I want to kind of like mainly ask you, and I would love to actually hear from Crystal Palace, hopefully in the comments about this one, because it is kind of like a dilemma. The dude has done so much for the club, and I agree. It's kind of like that deal where if he's not there, they might actually be playing better, and because the flow would be better and you wouldn't have one focus, so you can play more as a team when you're attacking. But at the same time, you go through the seasons and you go even sometimes, even this year, like game by game, he has, on paper at least, when you're looking at like the score sheet, earned them so many points. By losing Zaha at the same time, do you really risk losing those points is what I would worry as a Palace fan. It's kind of like a win-win or a lose-lose to me, it feels like.
Yeah, I'll take this one and answer that question in kind of a reverse direction with a little bit of what Paul said. So they had a great year last year, right? They finished 12th. They added 9 players last year. So Vieira had a lot to basically break down the Hodgson, because basically at the end of the Hodgson era, they allowed every player to get to a free and walk. And then they just started buying young players and piecing them together. So I think that was a big win for them. They also had 15 draws. And on our first show, we criticized Brighton for all their draws, right? Well, if it weren't for all those draws, Palace would have legitimately been in a relegation battle. And if you take out Zaha's goals and assists, which was the highest percentage of any one player representing for a club, they would have been relegated in 18th position. Now, we all know someone else would have added, and if they were playing in his stead, would have created some of that. So, though I agree that I think it would be better for the club, I think it will set them back this personal season because they don't have a striker who can make up for his goal involvement. The one thing I agree with Paul a lot on is I think Mateta is the best striker they have because I believe Elise is the best winger they have, and that includes Zaha. I think Michael Elise is 1 year away from being a top 6 player. I think if he was healthy all last year, there'd be bigger clubs in for him right now. When he played, I think he was their best player. And I always pronounce the kid's name wrong, but the other big signing they had last year, Abiche Eze, he's another player who creates in the midfield. I think he offers a lot to them going forward. But my number one thing for them is they need a striker. They need a striker that can jot down the start of the campaign, can score them 10 to 15 league goals. Because if you had 10 to 15 league goals from one player, I think you could really kick on for them. But without that, I think they're in a little trouble. I mean, they've made very little business, ins or outs, that improve their side. And I just don't see how that helps you kick on. And they better do something for Vieira because I think eventually there will be bigger and better clubs coming in for their manager, just like bigger and better clubs come in for their players.
And you know me, Bickler, I love playing devil's advocate. So when we say, you're looking at these names and there's a lot of promising young talent there. There's some players that impressed. But could that also be because of the attention Zaha gets? So the moment he is gone, is that going to negatively affect how these guys look? Because let's face it, whenever you play Crystal Palace, one eye is always on Zaha and where he's going to be, what he's going to do. There's always one guy covering, one guy as a backup. So automatically creates some space for the other players.
I mean, I think you can make that argument both ways. I think you can always make that argument both ways. Like, is it the chicken and the egg, or does it make him less predictable, right, with him out? So I don't think we can answer that until we see it. But, I mean, I look at this and I see a pretty young, talented squad in general, all from top to bottom. And I think, honestly, we didn't talk about this Ducouré kid they picked up from the French league, this 22-year-old. I think he's going to be a stud. I really like what I've seen from him. And if I'm having anybody pick a young French strong central defensive midfielder out of the French league, I probably want it to be Patrick Vieira. He's probably got it. So I think, they've got the pieces. It's going to all hinge on what happens with Zaha. It really is going to. I mean, Galley's right. Maybe they take a step back to take 2 steps forward with that. And maybe that's what that looks like this year. But if I'm a Palace fan, I'm actually really, really excited for the first time in a long time.
So there's a couple of rumors of Dwight McNeil coming in, perhaps, and you guys might know Chris Richards, the American center back from Bayern.
That's done.
Is it a done deal now? Is it official?
20 million from Bayern Munich. He will be their starting center back, and Vieira had him at NYCFC on loan when he was in the MLS, so he knows the player. So he went and bought a guy he wanted. So I like that signing both from an American standpoint and a Crystal Palace standpoint. He's really good. And if our men's national team ever gets better, it's because players get to leagues like the EPL, though, and get to show that they can be a center back. If he can be a starting center back in the Premier League, then he can be on the national team. Unlike a guy we're going to talk about in a little bit who's been a starting center back in the Premier League and proven he's not a starting center back in the Premier League. But I'll wait to get to Tim Ream. But I'll say this.
He'll be a stud in the EPL. We'll start him at right back or something.
Don't get me wrong. I should have put a caveat, Paul. He'll be good as soon as we have a manager that is good enough to manage a national team and not.
All right, that's what I'm talking about.
So I love Galley's hate of the U.S. national team management.
I like how there's no worries. I'm not insulting anyone in England on this EPL show as long as I just rip on the U.S. men's national team. But
It's the one thing that really brings me and Gally together.
I think
does
so.
bind
Yeah,
us.
it does unite you guys in the hate channel, so that's always great.
It should be our third political party in the United States.
That'd be a good idea. I have 3 big keys I'm hoping for them for this year, though. They need to establish a striker, right? They need more out of Elise and Abize. They should be their 2 focal points and get away from Zaha being everything to them. And most importantly, and this is selfish, I really think they need to buy a power-driven midfielder with something to prove with 2 last names.
Somebody needs an opportunity. Get that man an opportunity.
There is an opportunity somewhere at Selhurst Park for a good-looking
Comes
jersey.
with a free TikTok account.
Imagine the physical presence that beauty of a man would look like in that red, white, and blue classic kit. It would be just gorgeous. Ox, if you're listening, and we know you are, make a move to Crystal Palace.
Yeah, and take your wages with you. I don't know if Crystal Palace is going to pick up those wages, but so what are they going to pick up? How many points will they pick up? Or more importantly, where will they end up, Bickler? Let's start with you.
I have them like in that 8 to 12 range. That's where I have them. I have them in that sort of 8 to 12 range, but Gally is probably talking more sense. If Zaha leaves, they may take a little bit of a step back, but I don't know, man. I see them top half of the table. I'm bullish on Crystal Palace.